I went into he had the Dave Portnoy show at the time, and I was just rattling off ideas and then one was like the Joe and Joe show. And it was like, we're going to talk about,
like, wait, what?
We're going to talk about the Bachelorette, JoJo. We're going to talk about the singer, JoJo. We're going to talk about JoJo Embiid all over a cup of coffee, the JoJo and Joe show. And so as soon as he heard that, he's like, what the f are you talking about,
Brilliant.
dude?
Bev,
yes,
you and Pat Bev have a absolute dynamite podcast as well. But
Thank
Pat
you,
Bev has came out and publicly said he will put up $1 million against anybody that wants to go at you in a hip hop battle.
In a rap battle,
no one is trying to go at you here. We're just saying that, just to let
Honestly,
you know.
and I hate to say it because I would light everybody up.
Yeah.
I give off this kind of white men can't jump look. You know what I mean?
Nah.
Like the kind of tight jeans, like the bent bass. I don't look like a threat, but I would use that to my advantage whenever I was in a rap battle. And dude, I ended some people's careers. I'll be honest with you. I ended some people's rap careers. Like they came
You just
in,
walked off on them?
They felt bold about it, and then like they never signed up for another rap battle again after I was done with them. I got a way of finding people's insecurities and like picking at it like a crow, dude. Like just ripping apart the smallest things they're insecure about, and it went good for me. It was a fun little chapter of my career. The pay was shit, but it was fun to do. Dude.
What started that?
It's there's no money in it because I don't honestly.
No, I said what started you getting into it?
What's that about?
It's the accent. We'll get subtitles. Can someone translate, please? Yeah.
What'd she say?
Yeah. Why did you start rapping in the first place? Yeah.
It was really that, it was probably just like that I was like an angsty teenager, and it was, I went to Penn State, and as soon as YouTube came out, I Googled every fight that was on YouTube, every single like fist fight that you could find, because I was probably just this like, just getting out of high school, like trying to become my own person, like had this like bloodlust, and I watched every conflict, literally every fight that existed on YouTube, and I was like, what else is there that like scratches this itch of like combat or whatever? And it was these word combats, and I would watch these freestyle battles of these guys on stage kind of ripping each other apart, and I was like, I kind of want to try this. And so there was a famous not even battle rapper, industry rapper. He came to Penn State, and after his show, I kind of went up to him after the show. I was like, I heard you rap. He's like, all right, what's up? And I just started rapping at him. People took their cameras out, and it just went viral the next day. And so after that, I had all these battle rap leagues calling me, people like wondering what the story was, because I've always been like the whitest presenting person you could ever imagine.
Sure.
It's incongruous to the hip hop world where all these guys are, they different, you know what I mean? Different from me. I was a fish out of water, but in some ways I use that to my advantage.
Like B Rabbit, dog.
I was B-rabbiting, honestly. Yeah, it was a little bit. And I was just like painfully self-aware, and like I knew all the shitty things about myself. So I was like, man, these guys can't say shit to me, dude. I have already thought the worst things about myself. Like there's no way that anything they're perceiving about how I present myself is going to be anything more damning than my like nasty ass internal monologue that I'm ripping to myself at all times. Just like, oh, these guys
So would you, Justin, here we go. Yeah, I was waiting for it. He's jumping in.
So would you be able to do it now? Or
so the way that
how's
battle
it
rap
work?
started off as it was a freestyle thing that was on beats, and everybody would kind of go for 30 seconds, and then the other guy would go for 30 seconds on the beat. And then what it evolved into was it's like this pre-written thing, and a lot of people don't know that, but you find out 2 or 3 months beforehand what somebody or who you're going to be going against, basically. So you have all this time to like come up with things and be like, he's got skinny, weird looking ankles or whatever, and get to the bottom of it, or like his tattoos, he's trying to prove something with his and I was spending weeks kind of going over these things that maybe they're not even true, but I could present this picture to a crowd. So like I can like freestyle, but the product that like comes from me taking my time to write and figuring out everything that like I want to say about someone is such like a better, more
I
elevated
bet. Okay.
product.
No,
You know
that
what I
makes
mean?
sense.
But that was my pushy way of copping out.
He's like, I don't know enough yet. We'll get there. I don't know you guys like that yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to cover up my ankles real quick.
No, dude, I have literally the skinniest ankles. I played football for like 3 years growing up, and my mom could like tell who it was by like who had the skinniest ankles on the field. I was like a chubby, like 8th grader, like playing defensive line with like skinny ankles. It was, I wasn't built to be an athlete. I'll be honest.
I was that
with you.
chubby 8th grader on the D line, just did not have skinny ankles though. Still chubby.
Really?
Everything about me chubby.
Really? You were chubby growing up?
Oh, yeah.
I was, buddy. I
Really?
was. I went from like 8th grade, I was like 5'8", and then all of a
Oh,
sudden.
man, I hope we show a
freshman
photo right now.
year-
I hope we
will.
show a photo.
We
You
will.
have one? You've seen it?
No, I've seen photos of him when he was chubby, yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm sure we'll put it up there once this goes on there. But freshman year, went to about 6'1", 6'2", like had literally no control of my lower body. When I would run, I couldn't lift my legs up off the ground, like to get strides. I couldn't do it. So like from that point on, it just took time and time to grow into my body and try and become a little more flexible and get knees to chest, good running form, all that type of stuff. But
I think it's so helpful to grow up. I honestly think that everyone should be chubby at some point in their life because it
gives you a whole new appreciation.
makes you a little bit more well-rounded, if you know what I mean. Like there's people, it just, you don't take yourself so seriously. Like the people who grow up and are just like hot
Perfect.
their whole life or
Yeah.
whatever, it's like, okay, you've had a different lived experience where people might even treat you differently because of like how you look or how you've always looked or whatever. I can't recommend chubbiness enough. It can really form me. It got me sharp, you know what I
It's
mean?
gonna be tough going through it, but it's gonna make you stronger
Exactly.
than ever.
I
know. You're
swear
just
to
gonna come
God,
out
like-
stronger than ever.
I do think that there's people who just, I think there is a real peaked in high school thing that some people like really get like, they crush it really early on in life, and it like, it strips away some of like the desire to want to create something of yourself or like, and I'm not saying this is true across the board, but I think that there's so much to be gained from an awkward teenage phase or like growing up and you're not the most popular person. I think that those people have such an upside.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, dude. So we mentioned the freestyle,
Yeah, yeah.
Barstool. Definitely want to get into how you got started with that because
Totally.
again, we brought up Pat Bev. You and his podcast has been killing it, and the whole dynamic of that is
The
crazy
relationship
as well.
seems like it's just as
and
tight
just-
as it gets.
And the fact of him in season getting traded, playoffs, all that type of stuff. But really, let's go back to the Barstool days and how you got started out, because we mentioned all these different things you're good at. You watch the boxing, the
rough and
boxing
rowdy
matches,
stuff. Yeah,
the
the
rough and
ringside.
rowdy. You on there commentating. It seems like you just like know boxing, or you're just a professional commentator. So like you kind of adapt to different things, and you got all these different talents. Is that how it got into with Barstool of let's get in there, make some content and all that, or was
So I always wanted to work at Barstool. As soon as I found it, it was just my sense of humor, the way that they talked about things. It was so like fun and interesting to me. And I applied to Barstool and they're like, you can't work here. And I was like, fuck. Like I didn't have the bona fides. I didn't have the background. I basically got turned down the first time. And then I started making a blog because I heard their bloggers blog 8 times a day and they're just like slaving away in the blogging mines is how they made it seem. So I was writing 8 blogs a day on some personal blog, sending every one of them in. I'm positive they didn't read any of them. So I applied again. They turned me down again. And the only thing that brought it back around is I kept plugging away at this battle rap stuff, and it turned into something that was starting to go viral. And I'd have these clips that were really big on different platforms. And then I got to the point where I was the champion of this league, the King of the Dot champion. And then I won another championship for them. And then I was like, hey, I'm a 2-time battle rap international champion. Now can I please work there? And they were
Check
like,
the resume.
they were basically like, you can write about the Philadelphia 76ers. And so I was like, fuck it, foot in the door. I would write the most detailed breakdowns, because really I'm a nerd at heart, no matter how you spin it. Sports nerd, love the Sixers, obsessed with basketball. And so I write these really detailed breakdowns. And the guy Smitty was running Barstool Philly at the time. He's like, hey, this is good, man. This is damn good. And such a credit to Smitty. He kind of opened the door for me, and he's like, I'll walk you into Dave's office, come up to New York for 3 days and just come in the office, sit here, and you'll meet Dave and you'll get a chance to pitch yourself to Dave. And so I finally got my foot in the door, went up to the office, and my mindset was, if I get in there, I want to be undeniable. So I said, I'm going to write a list of content ideas that are so long and so preposterous that I'm going to make him make me stop. I'm going to make him be like, hey, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. I get it. You have a weird brain. You have a ton of ideas. And so I went into he had the Dave Portnoy show at the time, and I was just rattling off ideas and then one was like the Jojo and Joe show. And it was like, we're going to talk about,
like, wait, what?
We're going to talk about the Bachelorette, JoJo. We're going to talk about the singer, JoJo. We're going to talk about JoJo Embiid all over a cup of Joe, a cup of coffee, the JoJo and Joe show. And so as soon as he heard that, he's like, what the f are you talking about,
Brilliant.
dude? And I went back home. I kind of had the sense that it went good. I went on his show the next day, wrote him a little battle rap, kind of made fun of him having backwards knees and a big nose or whatever. He could tell that I could take it as well as I could give it. And then got home 2 days later, he sent an email. He's like, what's it going to take for you to work here? And I was like, oh my God, dude.
What did that feel like? That felt pretty good, right?
It felt incredible, honestly. It's one of the coolest moments of my life. It's this kind of I didn't fall to my knees and thank the heavens, but that's kind of what it felt like. It was this salvation of wanting to have a job somewhere, getting rejected and being like, it might not work. It might not happen. And trying all these other ways, but keeping the one goal in mind, trying to get 1% better every day. You know what I mean? Trying to just slowly progress from the battle rap world where it's hey, I might have done 8 battle raps a year, but you're getting $2,000 for one of those. You know what I mean? And it's months of preparation. So even if I'm doing 8 of them a year, it's $16,000. I'm working odd jobs, coming from working at a bar or trying to do other content. And finally, I'm getting to a point where it's I'm accepted, and he's even asking what's it going to take? As if I wouldn't have said yes to literally the minimum wage. You know what I mean? I would have taken anything. And so finally I got my foot in the door at Barstool, and it was really no looking back. It was how can I implement these ideas? How can I kind of put into practice the fact that, yeah, I have a weird brain. Yeah, I like to nerd out. I'm going to just be an endless fountain of ideas and enthusiasm to try and just make shit happen.
Where does that mindset come from? That foot in the door mindset of, if I get that opportunity, I'm going to be more than prepared. I'm going to overload them. Is there someone you looked up to that you're like, man, that's a great idea? Or is that just you from day one? Is that your mindset?
So within the Barstool world, there was a time when Big Cat I think Big Cat, Dave, maybe someone else, maybe at KFC or something, they went to go meet Mark Cuban, and they were pitching ideas to Mark Cuban. And I saw that Big Cat just had so many ideas from Mark Cuban. I was like, okay, a ton of ideas will work. But really, I think that it comes from just wanting it, having known I didn't do enough the first time, wanting it, I didn't do enough the second time. And by the third time, I was like, I'll do so much more than is even required. Not only more than the next person, but more than they can even stomach of me. I want to overload them. And I mean, I think a lot of ways it comes from I guess upbringing. I have a pretty cerebral family, but it was really just I just wanted it so badly. I just needed to get a foot in the door.
How long was the time between the first application and the time where he said, what's it going to take?
Probably about 3+ years.
Oh, wow.
It was years. It wasn't immediate, because it was did the first time, I even met Smitty, and I think I met Smitty at a bar at the Jersey Shore or something, and I probably was a dickhead. I was so what's it going to take to make this happen? Cocky, knowing that I had it. And I the communication fizzled, and then all I could do was overthink that first interaction that I had with him. And I was like, man, I came on too strong, or I was an asshole, or I was so sure of myself that I was a good fit that I didn't take the time to prove it to everybody else that I would be a good fit. And so it was a lot of self-reflection and kind of getting back in the dojo and being okay, what did I do wrong on my first approach? How can I rectify that? How can I kind of coach myself up to put myself in a position where I truly will be undeniable? Because if I hadn't got it the fourth time, I don't know what the fuck if I didn't get it the third time, it's dude, I would have just had to go back to the bar. I was cutting roast beef at a bar, you know what I mean?
No shit.
It was I'd have to go back to cutting roast beef, dude. Nobody wants to No, he wants to cut roast beef, man.
There was one time we had a presenter speak to us, and he was a dog expert. And we walk in, and he has a picture of a dog up on the screen, and he asked all the players in the group. He goes, "Okay, what animal is this?" And everyone's like, "A bulldog." He's like, "Yeah, okay. What were they? What?" And he was a specialist in dogs. And they said, "What?" He goes, "Do you guys know what bulldogs used to herd?" And someone was like, "Sheep." He's like, "No, it was a bull. Obviously, bull. It's a bulldog." And so he goes, "Let me tell you the story of what they used to do." He said these bulldogs were used by bull herders to support them. And this bull herder had to take all of these bulls and move them from one place to another, just guide them along. There'd come these moments when the bull would be stubborn and fall to the ground. So the bull herder with this stick would start poking the bull and say, "Hey, get up. Yeah, get up." And it wouldn't move. Then he would stick this little bulldog on him. This little tiny bulldog would go and get in the bull's face and start barking. "You better get up. You better get up." Obviously, the bull doesn't speak bulldog, sees this little tiny thing. It's like, "You're not going to do anything. I'm not listening to you." If the bull didn't move, the bulldog was trained to jump up and crush the bull's face. The bull would stand up and has this little bulldog dangling from its face. Because it's in excruciating pain, it would do everything it could to get this bulldog off of it, slam it against trees, slam it against the ground over and over and over again. The bulldog would take a beating, but it would not let go. The bull would fall to the ground. The bulldog would let go, back up, and start barking. "You better get up, or we're going to do that again." Now the bull speaks bulldog. The bull stands up and follows that little bulldog wherever it goes. You're the bulldog. Is literally taking that beating over and over and over and being relentless. I am not going to let go until I force my way into this. And that's like the epitome of the bulldog story.
Totally. The hunger is what like drives the story. And it was like literal hunger at some places. Like I was living with 3 roommates. All of them had like legitimate jobs. And I would go into my roommate's room and I would literally find fucking quarters on the ground until I got $1.50. I would go to the truck on the corner, buy an egg sandwich for $1.50, split it between like lunch and dinner. And it was like that was like, I'm going to get by on this. I was having like tortillas with hot sauce, poverty meals. You know what I mean? Just being like, fuck, I gotta, you know what I mean? I have to find a way. And it was literally just the nights when I was just up super late. Maybe I was trying to write a battle rap or trying to find a way to get in, when I was just like, what am I fucking doing with my life? That was like that hunger in the pit of the stomach, that bulldog in there that was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like it was like looking in the mirror and convincing myself I'm going to make everything different. From like, even as like the, chubby 8th grade or whatever, it's like, I'm going to make everything different about how I am, how I feel about myself, and taking it to a different level.
I mean, and now you're interviewing people like Mark Cuban, who you just mentioned, which is wild, bro. So like
crazy.
First of all, we talked about wanting to get into that whole podcast with Pat Bev and how that all came about, because that really is, it's amazing how you guys operate at such a high level, and he's got the season going on, he got traded, all that kind of thing. Have you had that stop and pitch yourself moment of like, holy shit, I just interviewed Mark Cuban, or is it just head down grind right now?
Totally. I think it's the first. I'm definitely a person who has like immense appreciation for like the place that I'm at, and it comes from where I've been, but it's just the realization of the beauty of every moment. Like I'll just like get romantic about like walking around New York. I'm definitely a very like present and mindful person. So it's like, if we interview Mark Cuban, if we're even like going to when he was on the Sixers, I was standing on the baseline with one of the other producers, and like Joel Embiid just like kind of like pointed at me and was like, "What's up?" And I was like, me? Like he knows who I am, because I'm the same guy who is the Sixers blogger, like a Sixers fanatic, like just obsessed with the Sixers as a fan. When they were tanking, the worst team in the league, I would watch all 82 games like alone, just like that was the only thing I had to focus on. So every time that I'm in a moment where I get to talk about the NBA or be, having these conversations with these NBA players. We're at the Vegas Summer League and these guys are like stopping me. They're like, oh, Mr. Rapper, like don't get me with any bars or anything like that. It's like, it's always like a pinch myself moment because these are the people that I look up to. And so I don't see myself as their peer, but knowing that there's like an inherent respect or even less than that, just a recognition is something where it's like, how is this real? You know what I mean? How is this happening? It's like I attribute so much of everything to luck. Like I'm just such a lucky individual. You know what I mean?
How did it all come about with Pat Bev? Because I feel like it was the one postseason he went and did some hits on ESPN, and he was just, it was viral clip after viral clip.
Yep.
And then you guys started the podcast, and it just wasn't stopping after that. You guys have taken off ever since.
So Pat Bev had the off season two summers ago, and he went on ESPN and he said, Chris Paul's a cone. Like Chris Paul's not guarding anybody, just bombastic. He's like, I look across, I see Chris Paul licking my chops. And everybody's just like, what the f***? This guy is built for media. And I think Dave Portnoy, the guy that runs Barstool at the time, was like, I need this guy. And basically hit up Pat and was like, hey, I got a bag for you. Come over to work at Barstool. We'll make it happen. And at the same time, that summer, Dave and Erica, they're saying, hey, we're talking to Pat Bev. We think that you would be a really good co-host for him. But Pat didn't know that. He didn't know me from a can of paint. He didn't know anything about me.
What year was this?
This is 2 summers ago. So
Okay.
this is, Pat bounced, he's been on a couple teams since then, but he had just been on the Minnesota Timberwolves and he was about to be on the Lakers. And so it's like, oh shit, Pat Bev's going to be on the Lakers. LA, bright lights, same team as LeBron James. It's going to be massive. But they're pitching me to work with Pat, but Pat has no idea who I am. And so I started being this idea guy. I'm like, oh, I'm going to give him 50 names for the name of this podcast or whatever. I'm throwing out like all these like clever names. And one of them's like, can't stand Pat. Like double meaning, you know what I mean? You can't stand still, but people, have a strong opinion of Pat Beverly. And I'm pretty sure he did not like the name at all. He's like, who the fuck is this guy saying that? Like people can't stand me? Like, fuck this guy. And so I don't think he really wanted to, I don't think he didn't want to work with me, but he was probably like, this guy like thinks he's on like, he can give it to me, like he can give and take with me. And I think that he was a little bit slow to be on board. And at first he was calling me Ron instead of Rone. Like he didn't know. He was like, yeah, happy to be working with Ron. I was like, it's Ron.
My boy Ron.
He still had me saying in the phone at Barstool Ron. I was like, I do look like a Ron deep down. Like if you pick me apart, I am Ron looking, Ron presenting, but it's not Ron.
Ron looking, Ron presenting.
And then I finally, we went and shot the pilot at his house, and I over prepared for it, and Darvin Ham was their coach, and I was talking about how Darvin Ham was like the father of like something called like the hammer set, like a play in basketball that was basically named after him when he was on the Milwaukee Bucks. Just doing the research about him, his coach, everything around him, trying to become as over prepared as possible. And then I think after that first show, I even remember him talking to his manager next to him. He's like, man, he's like really knowledgeable. He's so knowledgeable about it. And I think that he had that kind of aha moment where it's going to work. Like he and I have a good chemistry. I don't take myself too seriously. Like he can bust my balls. I'm going to try to push the envelope, and like he's a guy that pushes the envelope. So if I could be the person that's a little bit outside of him, then on the podcast, he's a little bit more safe. He could tell me to calm down. He could be like, hey, you can't say that. You're over the top or whatever. And I think that really built like a relationship that he and I continue that just outside of podcasting. You know what I mean? We'll just FaceTime, and he's a really mentally positive guy. Like he's the kind of guy just being like, hey, you're great. This show is great. Like we're working our tail off. And he'll kind of industrialize me with that like self-belief, be like, hey, Rone, you're fucking great at this shit. Like, and he'll gas me up. And so I'll just try to return in kind. Like I think that he has an incredible story in and of itself. Like had to leave college early. There was some kind of scandal, went to the NBA. It didn't work out right away. So he started playing basketball in Ukraine. Then he started playing basketball in Russia. And then he heard that there might be a contract for him in the NBA. So he and his mom bought themselves out of that Russia contract, played his first year in the NBA for free, and then basically turned it into a situation where he's made like $90 million playing basketball, has had a 12-year career, only missed the playoffs once in his career, affected winning at every level. So the fact that he has this really strong self-belief, and then he put some of that self-belief into me, he and I just have like a really strong and natural relationship.
It's relentless, huh? Relentless.
He's relentless.
Right, you can see.
And he just like sees it differently. And even like he'll have ideas that people might think are crazy ideas, but he's the kind of guy that like you can't tell him an idea is crazy or that something won't work because of what he has been able to accomplish. Like you might be able to tell like a normal person, hey, this isn't going to work. But like he brought himself out of Russia to pay for himself. Like he had the ultimate self-belief to be able to create this life and this journey for himself. So it's like you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not going to believe in him, and he'll take that as another like, hey, I'm going to fucking make this happen. Watch me make this happen. So I learned a long time ago not to doubt him, and whatever road he's going to go down, I believe in that because I've seen what he can do.
Sounds very similar to Dave Portnoy, as far as the personality goes, where they're just not going to let anything affect them, and they're just going to look for their goal and just head for it.
Because if you look up his name online, it is a relentless stream of negativity. I'm sure you've dealt with this, of just people, whether it's radio or on Twitter, just people being like, Pat Bev's a pussy, like, fuck Pat Bev, you're a fucking bum, like, go to fucking play in Europe or whatever, like seeing it as a failure. And it's this relentless stream of negativity that does not enter his inner matrix. It really like does not hit him. He can just zone in. It's not like interpersonally, it's affecting how he acts around anybody. He just has this relentless mindset. I don't know how much of that you like, does that affect you when someone's talking about you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. I think you learn, that's what people always say, they talk about experience, and that is experience, is going through stuff like that, which I'm sure you're going through because you guys have made it at a high enough level where you got plenty of haters, you know what I mean? People out there that are trying to knock you down. I just feel like every time we talk to somebody that's gone through that and they've turned it around, they've used all that hate as fuel. And like, that's what you end up always hearing. And I think, like we said, the quicker a younger professional, whether it's an athlete, whatever you're doing, if that comes about, the quicker you can turn that to fuel, to me, that's the unstoppable force right there.
Hardest part too.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're impenetrable as far as that kind of stuff? Or do you ever read a comment or something where you're like, fuck, they fucking got me?
Oh, no.
Good question.
Yeah, no. And I think my younger years, it started out as anger. I would hear it and be like they got me. That shit's getting me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And now it's just like, I have fun with it. It's like you said, if you're hard on yourself, like I'm hard on myself, there ain't nothing that I can look myself in the mirror, say about myself that I can't do, that anyone else is going to get me and top me and like make me feel like, damn, I don't feel that about myself. So like you get to that point, you just learn how, all right, man, like this is how I'm going to deal with it. I'm not running away with it. I'm just going to deal with it. And I think it's hard to get to, but you got to get to that point.
Performance is one thing, personal is another. If they go personal, that kind of, anytime someone goes personal, hits you. But if they're, hey man, what'd you, like, I don't give it. Like I threw it because I threw it. I missed my spot. F off. Like,
right.
It doesn't,
I was going to say,
matter.
like, have either of you had an experience in your career to go along with what you just asked, like where the narrative about you was so wrong and you're like, I'm getting painted as this thing that I'm not, and it really pissed you off. And you had to like navigate that stuff.
Yeah. We've talked about this plenty, but obviously in San Diego, there was a couple times there late in my career where I thought a certain message was getting out that wasn't true. Especially, I'm sure, as you can know now, working with guys in basketball, the last thing you want to be labeled as is a bad clubhouse guy, right? And guys pride themselves on looking out for younger guys, giving back, going on the road, going to a restaurant. Hey man, whenever you're in town, this is the guy here, take care of you, like doing all that type of stuff. So if somebody were to say an older guy was a bad clubhouse guy, I think that's stuff that hits players hard. And I think there was a couple times like that in San Diego where I did feel like that. And what's cool about it now and what you guys are doing, what we're doing is this player-driven media era, because you can just get on right away and speak about it. You don't have to talk to a writer. There's good and bad. We all know that, but you're putting a lot of trust in the writer. They don't hear your tone and how you're saying it. So as a fan, there's so much stuff that you read and you're like, and you have this one vision of it. And usually, that stuff's coming from beat writers who are plugged in with the organizations, people that work for the organizations. So now to see more players sticking up for players, I think we're not only seeing more authenticity, we're seeing the truth. And I think it's starting to change the way fans think.
Yeah, I think that, media definitely too can have an axe to grind. You know what I mean? I think that there's some guys who I think can be too close to things, and there's like an interpersonal thing, and they'll feel like somebody snubbed them in an interview or was short with them or something. And they're like, now they're going to create an entire narrative about that. And that narrative affects the fans' perceptions, affects, other players, GMs' perspectives and stuff like that. And I think that that's very unfair, which is why it is important to have a self-sustaining and self-controlled media. As far as your question, I think that I kind of like, I would see sometimes people being like, oh, Rone can dish it, but he can't take it. And I'd be like, wait a second. Like, I literally used to sign up for rap battles where dudes would like tell me that they f***ed my mom for 9 minutes straight. I was like, I'm pretty sure that I can take it. But I think in accordance with that, like, they're not always right on the internet, people who are hating, giving you a hard time, but they're also not always wrong. And I think that being able to have the humility to like take what people are saying and like assess and be like, is that true? Like, is that something that maybe I could work on? And just not always having like an ego about it and being like, wow, maybe I could work on that. Like maybe like Boner Dad 264, the internet commenter is like right about this or something like that. Cause they're not always wrong and they're not always malicious with their intent. There's a lot of people who just get off on getting under somebody's skin. But sometimes it's like, and maybe I could self-assess and maybe I could coach and be like, maybe I could be a little bit better with that, or maybe more patient or more driven or something like that. And just taking all feedback as not an indication of who I am, but maybe something I could work on.
Taking the ego out, that comes up a lot.
We talk about that all the time. And so you don't mind reading comments, and you go into there and just read them.
Sometimes, well, they say that for every like one bad comment is equal to like 100 good ones. Like you could read 100 good things about yourself and you're like,
so true.
All right, yeah, that's true. And then you like see one bad thing, you're like, oh fuck. And your week's ruined or whatever. You just feel terrible about yourself. So I think that there is, it's like a poison to it. And sometimes I'll be deep in the comments and my wife's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you putting, weight in somebody's opinion who you don't know and they don't know you? Because I think that it's like a natural and I think new thing to humans. People want to hear about themselves. People are talking about you. It's like you want to hear what they're saying. And I think it takes a decent amount of strength to be able to like walk away and be like, I know who I am. I'm not defined by somebody else's commentary about me online. And I could be like a kind of self-sustaining flame, whether they think that or not.
Do you think it's possible? So baseball is the closest schedule to basketball. Basketball has a lot of games.
Bro, you boys grind.
It's every day, bro.
I can't believe it.
Grind.
Do you wish it was fewer games?
Absolutely. I mean, there's times where there was one time, it was my second year in the big leagues and I was struggling, bro. I was hitting like 190. It's like May 30th. We got 4 more months of this. So I'm like, all right, I need a good 2.5 months to climb out of this hole. Like, this is tough. So we're in Texas one day and we're staying at the Four Seasons there. And the Four Seasons, they have the normal hotel, the pool, and then they have like a outdoor cabana room, and the teams would stay in these outdoor cabana rooms, and it's on a big ass golf course. So I'm walking to my room to catch the 12 o'clock bus. We have a 7 o'clock game at night because I need to go and do early hitting on the field and get on the machine. So I see Jason Vargas. I'm walking from outside the outdoor rooms inside, and I'm walking all the way, and I see Jason Vargas, pitcher on our team, just on the putting green with a cigarette in his mouth. Right there. And I'm like, Vargas, what are you doing, dog? He's like, just chilling, bro. He's like, hey, he's not pitching for the whole series. He's pitching 4 days after, whatever it was. And I'm like, why the fuck did I become a position?
Yeah, it should have been a pitcher, bro.
I'm
These days off.
I got to get out of this. He's living a good life right here. So
yeah, that's
man, that
incredible.
grind, it becomes mental, man. It becomes mental more than anything. But with that being said, there's a couple of baseball guys that have some podcasts going on right now, but do you think it's possible to have a podcast during the season? Because like you said, with a guy like Pat, can't stand Pat moving around doing all that type of stuff. He seems to be able to balance the podcast and still get his work in and be a good teammate and balance all that at the same time.
I think that it's definitely a grind, and I think that as a credit to him, it is a whole other job if you want it to be successful, because we've had other athletes come through Barstool with a podcast and it kind of fizzled out because they weren't putting their all into it. They weren't concerned with the ancillary things like the promotion and finding clips and finding ways to get better, self-assessing, saying this is what we need to do. We need more content that's shareable online or XYZ. And there's, I think, a lot that goes into it. But like I said about him, he is relentless. And so he really looks at it as a whole different job. I also was flying to Milwaukee once a week when he got traded to the Bucks. So I was like, I'm going to fly out there every time. We're going to do this podcast in person. I think it benefits a lot from being in person. Sometimes, I mean, I'm not going to be flying to Israel every week where he signed, you know what I mean? That'd be a tough one. But for the most part, I think that it benefits from being in person. So if I knew that he was going to be putting his all into it, if he was going to be grinding and busting his ass, I was like, I need to match his grind, because I'm not going out there, you know, diving on the floor for loose balls. You know, I'm not in the gym practicing, doing mobility workouts and like the recovery that's needed to be a pro athlete. So the least I could do is travel a little bit more. But I think that people don't realize that there's so much more that goes into being a pro athlete than what people see on the field, what people see on the day of the game. Even if you're getting to the stadium early, do the game, do some media afterwards, like how it's just an all-encompassing thing for months beforehand and months afterwards. And I mean, how long do you even get off in the summer? Like or in the winter? Like a month or two?
It's a couple
Maybe
months.
It depends on the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you're taking a week or two off and then you got to get right into your off-season program. And even like you said, on the road, guys get back from a day at the field and guys have training tables in their hotel room and they have massage therapy. I'm sure more in basketball too, because it's much more of a, you know, physical sport, running up and down, doing all that type of stuff. But it's a grind, man. And that's why I was like, man, how the hell is this guy doing this during the season? But like you said, man, he seems to be moving constantly all the time. And that's pretty impressive that he can manage. And like the other part, like I was saying, is he's authentic. He's speaking on things, but obviously his teammates all love him. So to balance all that, it takes a hell of a skill, man. He's definitely got it.
He's the guy, like, if he were a baseball player, he'd be like the bullpen pitcher that, like, when there was a scrum or a fight, he'd be the first one, like, sprinting out. You know what I mean? Does that ring a bell?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
Like, sprinting out, like, before anything even just,
I love that role, actually, yeah. It's one of my favorite roles.
Would you say he's a guy that people say maybe they hate playing against him, but when they play on his team, it's a guy you just absolutely love having on?
The perfect description. People, even other fan bases even feel that way. They're like, oh, when I'm playing against Pat Bev, he's like diving. It's like risky plays. Maybe he's going towards like ankles or something like that. No malicious intent. But at the same time, when you see him on your team, when you see like a skinny rookie, like somebody's trying to punk him and he's like, no, you're not going to fucking punk him. Like, you know what I mean? Like he'll step up, stand up for the younger guys. And if it's your team where he's like pushing your player and he's standing up for his own guys, you're like, man, that guy's a dickhead. But when you see him standing up for his guys, when you see him diving on the floor for the loose balls on the team that you root for, you're like, oh man, that guy was born to be in this city. That guy is perfect for Milwaukee, perfect for Philly. You know, people get this love affair with him where they're just obsessed with how much he cares and how much he's literally going to leave it all on the court.
Yeah.
What's the dream for you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want to get from this?
That's a good question. I think that, like, my goal is always just like creating. Like, I just love to make stuff and I get a restlessness when I'm not making stuff. And I almost suffer from that because I'm always like, let me find the new thing. Like, what's the new thing? Cause it's like fun to come up with a new idea and have that list of ideas and be like, this is going to be the next thing. And so while I do get, like, I scratch the itch by coming up with something new, I think like doubling and tripling down on the things that I have and just trying to grow them as big as possible. I think that that's something that I have kind of not explored as much. So I think that working with Pat and trying to build as big of an NBA brand within Barstool, I think that's definitely a goal. I have another podcast, Son of a Boy Dad. It's all comedy stuff, trying to build as much comedy stuff, you know what I mean? Try to be as funny as possible on those. That's definitely a massive goal, but just trying to find the brands that I have working and don't like abandon them and just put all of my energy into those and just try to make them as big as possible, while also like trying to fulfill myself, be a good husband, like try to, be a dad eventually, like working on all these things, like personally, be a good friend to my friends, be a good son to my parents. Like I think that those are all really good things that are important to me.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because on this podcast, we talk a lot about being a husband or a spouse and being a good parent, and pursue greatness in your job, in your career, and how do you manage, how do you do all of that? So with your relentlessness and your work ethic, how do you also be the best husband that you can possibly be? How have you learned to balance all that?
Totally. And I think that there were a lot of times in my relationship when it was really hard, because I was in Philly when I got the Barstool job, dating my current wife. And then I got the job in Barstool, and I was like, hey, like I got to move up to New York right now. And I think a lot of weaker relationships would have failed. And I think that I also have to be cognizant that a lot of the time she's getting the short end of the stick, because not only am I traveling a bunch, but the shit I'm traveling for looks like a bachelor party every weekend. I have like a college football show that I'm going to, and it's something that guys would love to do. Or I'm going to college campuses, like doing like a review of like frat parties or whatever. And while she's like at home, like being like, hey, like, is this going to be worth it someday? And it's me trying to assure her that it is going to be worth it, because she's not a person that's like really had any interest in being in the public eye. You know what I mean? And it's a credit to her that she has been able to withstand everything that comes with it, and like the publicity that even, deflects off me and shines on her. And I think that she has been very gracious in accepting that. But I think that that also comes with a responsibility on my part to realize that like, this isn't her dream, this is my dream. And so I need to be like conciliatory and cognizant of what she's going through, and be like, hey, like maybe I need to, make sure that I'm doing my part a little bit more, and maybe make sure that I'm like doing as enthusiastic, even maybe I'm tired coming off the road and I want to just sit on the couch on my phone, but like she's been sitting waiting for me to get home. So it's like, hey, maybe just like nut up and go like do something fun with her, instead of like taking so much, like trying to take care of myself the entire time, and really like making sure I strengthen and work on that bond.
I'm glad you got to shout her out for that, because you do seem super grounded, man. And you still have that hunger like you did from day one. And that's not easy after tasting a little bit of success, man. So we appreciate you coming here to school us on some game, man. And we're locked in. I've been locked in.
You guys rule.
I'm a big fan.
And I'm going to continue to be locked in. I'm going to check out your comedy stuff as well. So,
well, before we get, what's your guys' goal? What's your like goal with all this 5-year goal or something like that? Because this is such a cool, such a cool concept, such a free flowing conversation. The way it's set up, like I know it's going to look clean as fuck. So it's like, what are you guys gonna, what are you trying to build here?
For me, it was real conversations like we had today. I've worked in media for a long time, and it's just been surface level for the 4 or 5 years. I come here, I get to do this 4 or 5 times a year. I have conversations with people like you. I get to listen to Justin every day, and I get to hang with him. I just want this to be a safe space for everybody to say exactly what they want to say and get off their chest whatever they need to.
Yeah, the main thing with us is we always want to stay authentic, man. I think at the end of the day, kind of like I spoke on the San Diego experience and not feeling like I could actually speak up on it and had my word out there that was actually my true word. So I think we always want to be authentic. Number one, we always want to give the fans a different voice from the players that they're watching day in and day out. And like we've said before, basketball and football have done a really good job of doing that. Baseball, we feel like, is now getting to that party, because baseball, man, when you look at it, there's so much young talent in there. There's so many guys that have been playing for 13, 14, 15 years and we feel that aren't getting the love they should. So to shine some light on them, give them some love, to impact some guys that are young in the league, young in college, high school, whatever it is, I think we're just trying to continue to grow that outreach, give back to the game that set us up for what it was. But we'll always be authentic and just tell it like it is, man. That's what our goal.
Hell yes.
Yeah, for me, it was the storytelling aspect, to hear people's stories. And I remember when Haas and Telly called and they said, hey, Haas is like, hey, we're going to create this podcast to tell people stories and to hear about their journeys. And because in my role, when you get to hear players talk about what their goals are, their dreams are, the adversity they've overcome, and then to hear that you wanted to create a podcast to create a platform for that, not just athletes, but people who are around athletes who love sports. And it's been so cool. So yeah, to hear people like yourself and stories it's awesome. But who knows what this could turn into.
Yeah. And I think it continues to give fans a different perspective, because you even said it in the beginning when you were working with Pat Bev and understanding what basketball players, what these athletes are going through. They're at the stadium, and then when they come home, they still have to maintain, whether it's diet, whether it's, doing the training table in the room at the house, whatever it is. There's so much that goes into it. And I think now all the fans are starting to understand that. They're starting to appreciate that. And in sports like baseball and basketball, where there's so many games, when you are able to see the consistency of a Pat Bev and see it day in and day out, there's that whole new appreciation for a fan. So that's
well, two things I'll say. One, I think that there's like even the smallest thing of the way that this is set up, that it's almost we're in like a circle, as opposed to a lot of podcasts are just in a line. It's like if you're lined up, it's like a performance. But if you're in a circle, it's like a communal conversation. I think that is like such like it just checks a box in such a small way that just makes it feel supernatural. But two, I don't think that there's a lot of baseball players and platforms where a lot of baseball players have been able to show their personality, because like you kind of have this fringe idea that there's clubhouse guys who put bubble gum on somebody's hat or whatever, dicking around with each other. But you don't necessarily get to see that conversationally and hear the stories and the backstory. And I think that this is a great platform for that.
Appreciate it.
And I really applaud you guys. So I'm excited to see the growth, and I'm happy I could be here early on.
Thanks. Last one, I promise. This is something that we're going through now, and I would love to pick your brain on this, because Pat Bev is a super knowledgeable basketball player, right? There is nothing about basketball that he does not know.
Right.
How do you guys, I'm guessing from interactions with your fans, but how do you guys pinpoint exactly what your fans want to know?
I think that I come at the game as a fan, not an expert. And so I almost am representative of the fan. And like I'll research and I'll learn, but I don't know a ton about the specific ins and outs of basketball. And I think it just comes from like just a curiosity, just like a natural curiosity. I want to know what people have to offer. I want to know what he can give me about basketball. And sometimes he'll get really in the weeds, and maybe there are basketball fans that love that. So there's a space for him to, break down like what kind of help defense you're supposed to be doing when on a drop set or something like that. And sometimes I'll be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But
nerd out in a basketball
exactly.
way.
But there's some people who love the nerding out. And I think that there's an equal amount of people who just love the just like hearing what it's like to be in the locker room with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid or whatever. Like, I think that there are people who, I think there's an audience for both of those things. So I think satisfying all of it, and I think that people respond well when you talk about something passionately. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It's like, if you're passionate about it, passion can make its way through a camera or through a screen that somebody's watching on, and the people feel that.